I would like to invite our speakers and moderator for the afternoon session up on stage, Professor Baharudin Abdullah, Professor Michelle Casano and Dr. Yap Yoke Yeow, and the moderator for this afternoon is Professor Onerji.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are going to talk on vasomotor rhinitis. And this is a very interesting topic, but because nobody knows what it is.
So between the three of us, I will start off by talking about the pathophysiology, basically trying to understand what the science tells us about vasomotor rhinitis and in the broader context of non-allergic rhinitis. And perhaps by understanding some of this pathophysiology and how it all originates and how the pathway works, we can wrap our heads around what kind of treatments would work for the patient, right? So basically, non-allergic rhinitis is a scope of diseases, a spectrum of diseases that basically presents with paroxysmal sneezing, watery rhinorrhea, and nasal congestion. And we know that in any textbook, right, the causes of non-allergic rhinitis will be listed like this, right? Vasomotor, infectious, occupational, hormonal, drug-induced rhinitis, gustatory rhinitis, and the notorious NAS, right? Nasal non-allergic rhinitis with eosinophilia syndrome. So if I can just quickly touch on each one of these so that we know what we're doing when we are narrowing down the scope of non-allergic rhinitis and ruling them out. So of course, the infectious rhinitis is really just a common cold and should last 3 to 5 days, right? The natural history of. And if it continues beyond that 5 to 10 days or have a resickening after that, then we know it goes on to become an acute rhinosinusitis and slowly progresses to subacute and chronic, right? So those would be an infectious kind of non-allergic rhinitis. Having taken that out of the picture, let's look at occupational rhinitis. And this is usually triggered by dense cigarette smoke, cold air, air fresheners, maybe even formaldehyde and other chemicals in the workplace. So a good history to look at their occupational exposures will help us identify the occupational rhinitis. Then we look at the hormonal rhinitis, right? In the history and physical examination, we want to be sure these are not patients who have hypothyroidism that we've missed, right? Because in hypothyroidism, there will be a sympathetic hypoactivity, right? And what about patients who may be on oral contraceptives or on estrogen replacement therapy? Right? We do know that estrogen induces edema in the nose, and progesterone will also induce vasodilation and congestion. So let's be sure we are not dealing with a hormonal issue before we jump to vasomotor origin. There's also drugs, right, that can cause rhinitis. So we have the popular term rhinitis medicamentosa, which usually is attributable to antihypertensives and sometimes to aspirin and also NSAIDs, right? So you have antihypertensives, the common ones that do cause rhinitis are reserpine, gonadotropin, phentolamine, metaldopa, hydralazine and prazosin, beta blockers, right? Then there's also the abuse of topical decongestants, typically presenting with a rebound, right, after stopping for a day or two. So drug-induced rhinitis is something we should be cognizant of, be aware of, and rule that out in the history. Then there's the gustatory rhinitis. And what gustatory rhinitis usually occurs after ingesting hot or spicy foods, or even alcohol, and this is usually characterized by a profuse watery rhinorrhea. Okay. Then finally, we also have the non-allergic rhinitis with eosinophilia syndrome, which fortunately is not too common in this part of the world. But really in NAS, what you get is sneezing paroxysms and watery discharge, very much like an allergic rhinitis, but it is not IgE driven. So these are ruled out by doing a skin prick test usually, and also confirmed by doing a nasal smear. I think the second speaker will be going into much more detail on this, so I won't labor this point. So the vasomotor rhinitis, right? After we've ruled out all these other possible sources or origins of their non-allergic rhinitis, will be a hyperreactive nasal mucosal disease, right? And this is an important term to take back because it is hyperreactivity. Whether it's hyperreactivity is from the efferent side or from the efferent outflow, nobody really knows. And we've not actually proven this autonomic imbalance thing that we often say, to explain the cause of vasomotor rhinitis. But we do know it is basically a hyperreactive nasal mucosa. So there's a sudden onset manifested by nasal stuffiness, watery nasal discharge, and postnasal drip or sneezing. Okay? And the classical symptom or the classical feature is that there's an immediate relief once the trigger is removed. And of course, no eosinophilia on the nasal smear, skin prick test is negative if you want to be absolutely sure. The common triggers for this vasomotor rhinitis will usually be cold and dry air or a high amount of moisture, so a sudden change in humidity, right? Dyes, chlorine from the swimming pool sometimes, water, perfume, right? Cigarette smoke, exhaust gas, and also other inhaled irritants. So let's look at that pathway. It's all subserved by the trigeminal nerve. And most importantly, right, the efferents are from the trigeminal, mostly from the anterior ethmoidal nerve. And the outflow, right, which is also subserved by the trigeminal nerve from the sphenopalatine ganglion, and of course, supplied by the Vidian nerve, will then bring that parasympathetic response. So the common irritants are dust, smoke, perfume, powder, sharp odors, and ammonia, or corrosive gases or chemicals. There's also the chymic irritation from cautery or silver nitrate application. And capsaicin, right, is something that we use for provocation, and it's also responsible for vasomotor rhinitis, which is an active ingredient obtained from hot chili peppers. But the interesting thing about all the studies about capsaicin is that it's the receptors that are triggered or sensitive to capsaicin are also the receptors that's sensitive to all the other irritants, okay? And so this is really where the pathophysiology of vasomotor rhinitis really lies, right? It is these receptors that are sensitive to these irritants, then producing three main reflexes or three main responses. One is a local neuropeptide release from these very nerves, right? These nociceptive receptor nerves. And then there's a dorsal horn reflex, right? Immediate spinal sort of reflex through the medulla. And then there's also an axonal reflex. And this is shown, sorry, I think there was a picture for that. Sorry, it's disappeared from my slide somehow. And the receptors for these, right, have now been shown. The receptors that respond to capsaicin have shown to be the TRP receptors, right? The transient receptor potential receptors. There are two types: the TRPA, the encheirin, and the TRPV, the venin. So these receptors are what's actually sensitive to capsaicin, to heat, to cold air, and to dry air. And what happens is the neuropeptides are released when these are triggered. So when neuropeptides are released, like CGRP, calcitonin gene-related peptide, glutamate, and substance P, right, it induces pain, local pain, irritation, vasodilation, edema, and also recruits inflammatory cells for the long-term edema and inflammation. All right, so this is another nice diagram from the internet on how these neuropeptides are released and cause this response. Yeah, so this was the picture I wanted to show. And apart from that local neuropeptide release is an axonal reflex, right? So a self-perpetuating axonal reflex within those same neurons, also releasing more of these neuropeptides. And then there is the dorsal horn reflex that goes all the way to the medulla and back, then giving you that response of itching and sneezing. Okay, so if we're looking at therapies, or even new or novel therapies, we'll be having to think of either blocking these receptors somehow, or blocking the efferent outflow of the dorsal horn reflex somehow, or reducing the release of these neuropeptides. This is a very interesting article from China. Also looks at the TRP receptors, TRPV1 and TRPA, and delineates it very nicely, unfortunately in language that most of us cannot read. So I've had someone translate it for me, and it really summarized it very nicely. Right, and when you have stimulants, right, chemical or cold dry air, and they were looking particularly at cold dry air, then you have the nerves releasing the neuropeptides, you have the autonomic nerves also doing that, and then the epithelial cells themselves also may have an inflammatory response, so cytokines and so on, sloughing and cell shrinkage and so on. And so there's that interplay of the neuropeptides then doing their work for the reflex, sneezing, congestion, irritation, and so on. Then there's also the submucosal glands being stimulated by the parasympathetic outflow and the neuropeptides, giving you the rhinorrhea and nasal congestion. So symptoms become worse, and then the whole vicious cycle continues. All right? So this is another nice summary of that. Okay, and how the different trigeminal ganglions, particularly the sphenopalatine ganglion, is responsible for this. Right? C fibers being the afferent, and then through the sphenopalatine ganglion, the efferents then mediate the dorsal horn reflex with the sneezing and the nose block and the irritation and so on. Okay, so just one last slide to say that possibly the use of topical azelastine, which is found in our dimester, may actually work because there's been good evidence to show that azelastine is very similar to capsaicin in structure and can bind these TRP receptors and inhibit this response. Of course, there are other causes of sneezing that we can be aware of, more things to blame apart from just vasomotor rhinitis. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for this nice talk.